Like any self-respecting woodworker, I've avoided ripping like it's the plague. Until now. Let me show you what's changed. So for the longest time, this saw has been my saw of choice. This is a shark saw pull saw. It's a Japanese saw that you find on Amazon with a replaceable blade, right? And it's fairly flexible. However, I really have shied away from using the rip teeth, which is silly because that's about 50% of this saw, right? I must say that the crosscut teeth are pretty good. It gives you a pretty decent cut, nice and flush. However, the rip teeth I take issue with. Ends up that the saw ends up binding a lot. So let me show you what I mean. So first off, I have a couple lines drawn over here just to show you how a rip cut is going to be made. To do these rip cuts with a Japanese saw, you're not going to rip like this because the grain is going in this direction, and if you think of it once again that these are chisels, they're trying to fold down that grain. So if you ever see anybody ripping like this, they're really having a hard time. The best case scenario here is going to be when you're ripping completely vertical, which is perfectly fine. But in most cases, if you can manage it, you should be ripping so that the chisels, these blades, are actually kind of scraping the grain down, and that's going to be the easiest for you to manage. Okay, so let's see. All right. So use the small teeth at the very end to get that saw started, and go ahead and take it all the way through. Okay, so I'm starting to deviate from the line, and I'm also getting a little bit of pinch over here, so that saw, you can see that I'm having to use a little bit more effort to be able to get that saw through there. And that's because the set on these teeth is almost non-existent, right? Set means how much those teeth are actually pushed to the side. So yeah, I can go ahead and get me a tooth setter and start moving them left and right to my liking, but I'm of the thinking that if you buy a saw that's any amount of money, it should come prepared, 100%. So, let me show you what changed my mind in terms of ripping with Japanese saws. So this is the ryoba saw from Temple Tools. What really caught my attention were these rip teeth. Now you really can't tell, but the set on these teeth is a little bit more aggressive than what you see on something like this. Plus, I don't know if you can hear that, but the Temple Tool ryoba is a little bit thicker, which is primarily the main complaint that folks have with these ryoba saws, is that they're too flimsy. This one actually does not bend nearly as much as that shark saw. So, enough talking, let me just go ahead and make a couple cuts with this guy. So you see, I'm trying to get that line as straight as possible, but now I got to bring it down. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty much still on that line, much better than I was with the other shark saw. And now, to keep that line going, I got to bring that saw underneath the piece of wood. And yeah, now I'm starting to deviate from that cut. But I can still, look at this, I can move that saw with one hand without any binding. And I'll show you over here just how aggressive that saw is when compared to the shark saw. If you are thinking about checking out the Temple Tools saws or any of their tools, make sure that you use the discount code below. So these are those two cut lines. The one on the right is the one with the shark saw, and the one on the left is with the Temple Tool ryoba. And both are rip cuts. Let me see if we can get to where that line is. Hopefully you can see that. Yep, that line is continuing over here on the right, whereas this one, the ryoba with the Temple Tools, was still on the line, and it got all the way over here, and that's where we have some deflection. Okay, so that's roughly 4 or 5 inches further with the Temple Tool. Now let me show you something else. So ryobas are good, but I would say that really you should just limit these to crosscuts. And if you're doing any sort of timber framing, you're gonna want something really big, like especially like for tenon cheeks or something like that. Otherwise, you're just gonna be doing a lot of chiseling. However, I think that you should give this a try. So this is a Temple Tool timber rip saw, and it's roughly 14 inches of saw teeth. You can see they start from really small teeth over here all the way to large teeth. And the cool thing is that the teeth are impulse hardened. You can tell that they're impulse hardened because the teeth are all blackened. Typically Japanese saws, true Japanese saws, are blacksmith hardened. However, because these are mass manufactured, they have to be, they're impulse hardened, which is just an easier way of making sure these teeth stay sharp for longer. Let me go ahead and show you what this guy can do. So this is where that final cut was for the ryoba, where it started to deflect a whole lot. Let's see if we can do any better with this saw. Okay, so at the very bottom, establish that kerf. Now if it starts to come off, you can just kind of guide it like this with your hand. Well dang, that's pretty cool. Let me show you. So shark saw, Temple Tools ryoba, Temple Tools timber rip cut saw. Check that out. Okay, not only that, look at these shavings. Look at that. You can see that if you're working with the grain, that rip saw really gets in there and makes that cut super clean and easy. That's how you use a rip saw, and I'm really excited that I have these because now it's going to make working much less noisy whenever I do any sort of timber framing or large rip cuts like this, that I just want to use a rip saw as opposed to using a circular saw. So if you're tired of using cheap Japanese saws like this one, give this one a try. You might be impressed. Make sure that you click the link below and use the discount code provided. Thanks guys, see you next time.